Going to get things started in 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. What's going on, everybody? John here with you alongside Cooper Hopkins. It is a Saturday, August 8th, 2026. It is once again time for an annual tradition, the 2026 NHL Free Agency Frenzy. Mr. Cooper Hanley Hopkins, it's good to be alongside here with you. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I know he's still on the mute side and getting everything ready to go here, but we're going to be.
Bingo.
There we go.
John, it wouldn't be a new season for us if I didn't have at least one technical difficulty. I wanted to get it out of the way right away. But listen, if you're listening to this out there, if you're tuned in, something's special to John Ott when he breaks out your middle name. And man, he started this broadcast off with the middle name, and it makes me excited because we got a lot to talk about. And even though it's hot here in LA, John, 88 degrees, but we are 88 degrees on the 8th of the 8th month, but we're getting closer and closer and closer to hockey season again, and it's going to be a really fantastic season.
I love the symmetry that you laid out there, honestly, because if you keep in mind, at the time of this show, we're less than 2 months away from the start of the NHL season. I thought this one was particularly interesting because there was a lot of big swings out of the gate, maybe a weak free agency class, quote unquote, with the double air quotes, but still, teams made moves quickly. And this isn't a team I thought was going to be at the top of our list, but this is where I wanted to start. The Washington Capitals land forward Jordan Kyrou from the St. Louis Blues in exchange for Connor McMichael. Kyrou gets 6 years, $40.5 million from St. Louis. It's 6.75 until 2032. A 50-point guy, Milton Gastrin, Washington's first-round pick, 16th overall in the NHL draft. So able to get Connor McMichael there for St. Louis and turn around for Jordan Kyrou. That's good for them. We'll talk about them a little bit later. And it was an 18, 28, 46 season for Kyrou, but he's been a 70-point player on the average during the last 4 years. He's still just 28 years old, Jordan Kyrou, 8.1 until 2031. A couple more things, and I'll have Cooper jump in here. But the Washington general manager, Chris Patrick's not done. It's Alex Tuch from the Buffalo Sabres in exchange for David Camp and a third rounder. The 30-year-old signs for an 8-year deal, $84 million that expires in 2034. He'll be 38 years old at 10.5 per Tuch. A 30-30 guy. Columbus captain Boone Jenner, who we know is a 35-point guy, but he's missed a bunch of games over the last 6 seasons. 33-year-old gets a 4-year deal at $23 million at 5.75 until 2030. And last but not least, Captain Alex Ovechkin says 1 more year at least. Let's run it back. It could be 2. He played in all 82 games last year, had 32 goals, 32 assists, 64 points. It's just a 1 year, 4.25. Washington only missed the playoffs by 4 points. And then return assets because they need cap space. They offload Declan Chisholm, a 2027 third rounder, 2028 fifth for Hendrix LaPierre. All these moves to say for me, I think Washington's going to be back in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, John, I agree with you. And you know what? I think there's always one of these guys that stands out to me, and it's just anecdotal, but Kyrou just feels, maybe it's because he has an interesting last name. He felt like he would be a St. Louis Blue forever, but I actually love, now look, Alex Tuch, we can talk about him all day long. Influx of talent there, Boone Jenner, the leadership, not that like you need more with Ovechkin there. I think he'll pull the LeBron mode. I think he'll go for 2 more years before he maybe hangs up the skates. But Kyrou, I love, and I feel like that's a steal at 6.75 per. I wouldn't have minded it at 7.75 per. I think he's going to get back closer to that 70-point average that you pointed out, John, and I think the Capitals are going to make some noise in the playoffs.
And we talked about it before. When you think about the coaching staff of Spencer Carberry and what he was able to do alongside that team, they had a lot of Hershey Bears at the time, get them in the playoffs. They're used to being able to play with the lead play possession. And, you get Alex Tuck, like we talked about. Yes, he's getting older, but it's still, again, a 30-30 guy in the mix. There's a lot more goal scoring there, and I think Washington is going to be in good standing. Now, for the Toronto Maple Leafs, a little bit interesting of a year because they're 32, 26, and 14 last year. They do get the number one pick, the Penn State Nittany Lion, Gavin McKenna. He gets his 3-year ELC at 1.075. The entire staff gets revamped. Brad Treliving, who we know, is out. It's now general manager John Chayka. If you look at the Coyotes' history for more and some of that off time, it is not so great. And then bench boss Jim Hiller comes over from the LA Kings, and then the advisor, Matt Sundin. A lot to talk about here. So defenseman Simon Benoit and goaltender Joseph Woll to the Philadelphia Flyers for defenseman Emil Andre, who signed a 2-year, 1.55 from the Flyers. Not too bad. Sam Ersson, a 2026 third-rounder. Ersson then gets moved to the Ottawa Senators for a 2027 fifth. Defenseman Brandon Carlo gets moved to the Blues for a couple of 2026 thirds. They flip forward Nick Robinson for a fourth in 2028, who signed a 2-year with the Pens. They also, the Leafs, signed Troy Stetcher, who we know well, 2 years, 2.7. Forwards Jack Roslovic, he comes over, 2-year, $8 million. Brandon Domain, 29. He only had 9 points, 3 years, $7.8 million, 2.6 per for 9 points. I had that bolded. I thought that was a lot of money. Teddy Bluger, he's a good seasoned veteran, 2 years, $5 million. Colton Sissons, 2 years, 8.5. He's 32. Goaltender Sergei Bobrovsky comes over from the Cats to the Leafs. He's 37 now, 3 years, $21 million at 7 per. It was for Bobrovsky, 52 games played, 27, 23, and 1. He had a 307 goals against, highest of his career, 877, 4 shutouts. But this team is veteran laden now. I don't think winning free agency was the best plan, but I expected it. What do you say?
Yeah, John, I think one of the most important things that you just pointed out is that the team is veteran laden. What a great way to put that. It's not that they're necessarily old. I mean, you might have to lean toward that label if you're looking just in the crease with Bobrovsky. I think they're paying him to be the guy that he was 2 and 3 seasons ago, doing what he did with Florida, and he's got the rings to prove that that skill set is still there. Can he access it at this age? Probably, but how consistent can he be? But I like the other names that you mentioned. I think that the one that we have to point out, though, that everybody points out is Gavin McKenna. So on the other side, you got the young guy coming in, and it is Toronto. There is going to be pressure. How will he handle that is a massive question, but I think that the team and the decision makers, in Toronto did the best they could to get players who can be stable around him and give him the best chance to succeed. And really, how he goes, and I think if a certain mustachioed captain can get back to his normal point scoring ways, then I think that the Toronto's going to have a really nice season.
A couple more things for me, and then we'll break down one more question. Oh, you had your breakdown, but I still got a couple more thoughts. So Nick Paul leaves the Lightning in exchange for a 2027 fourth, 2028 third. And because the Bolts couldn't sign defenseman Darren Radish to free agents, they just didn't have the money. They end up getting a 2026 fifth rounder. Toronto gets him on an 8-year, $68 million deal at 8.5 for. The issue is that he's already 30 years old, Darren Radish, and just 3 full seasons prior to this, he hadn't really had anything until the 70-point breakout. He was a 30-plus point guy on the stat line. So they've made a lot of moves. We talked about the propensity to try to get back into the Atlantic, but we'll be talking about the Cats here in a minute. You had the Montreal Canadiens, the Buffalo Sabres, Tampa Bay Lightning, the Ottawa Senators. The Atlantic is loaded. Do you think all these moves are enough to get them back into the postseason? Or is this just a way to kind of move things forward for Gavin McKenna?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter. I think it's really trying to set the stage for Gavin McKenna to and look, Matthews is Matthews, but McKenna eventually, because Matthews been in the league for a minute now, let's not pretend he hasn't, it's setting the stage, and it feels like, let's look quickly back at some of the terms, the contract terms that raised your eyebrows, John. It feels a little bit like the general manager is kicking the can down the road, not in an extreme way, but it feels to me like, hey, let's get the table set now. If we can make the playoffs in McKenna's first season, I think that's a bonus. And when I commented a moment ago, I said, hey, I think they'll have a really nice season. It's going to depend on a few of those teams that you mentioned. Just like we always talk about our predictions, somebody's got to fall out to make room for the Maple Leafs. Maybe it's Ottawa, who's shakier now without Tkachuk, but you're going to need a couple teams to slip, and you got to climb. It's possible, but it's still going to be a challenge for the Maple Leafs.
That's what I'm thinking as well. Let's talk about another team before we get into our massive moves. We just wanted to stop at the big headlines as we always do first. The Florida Panthers. We knew it was an injury-riddled season. And General Manager Bill Zito going to be able to make some moves. He was going to be proactive after the prior back-to-back Stanley Cup champions missed the playoffs. The eyebrow raise began when the 23-year-old U of M man, Mackie Samoskevich, was traded from the Kraken for a first and a second rounder, which we'll discuss later. They're surely going to move that number 9 pick now. That's what we all thought, and they did. The Ottawa Senators get 4 picks in return, including 3 first-rounders, 925 and 2029 conditional first, along with a 2027 second-rounder. Captain Brady Tkachuk from Ottawa plays with his brother now in Florida and Matthew. 60 games played, 22, 37, and 59 plus 4. Not bad, but I do think those numbers need to bump up a little bit as Brady heads to Sunrise. It's a goaltending swap and a brand new tandem. They get back up Akira Schmid from the Vegas Golden Knights in exchange for a 2028 third rounder, and the Cats will lose some scoring depth as Evan Rodriguez, about 40 points, Jesper Bokrest, and prospect Ben Steeves head to the New Jersey Devils in exchange for Jacob Markstrom. Markstrom's numbers: 44 games played, 36 years old, 29, 23, 19, and 1, 307 goals against, 883 save percentage, and a shutout, and center Angus Crookshank. Markstrom initially drafted by Florida in 2008. Depth, they get Racco Gudis, 36 years old, but he gets a 6-year. It's only 1.5 per until 2032. Kind of feels like Brad Marchand. He'd be 42 at that time. They get Sam Lafferty, Tobias Bornfot, the defenseman, Johnny Beecher, who we know, Donovan Zabrango at $850K on a 1-year, Cole Schwint, Alexander Petrovich on a 2-year, $875K. My big question is this. With Officer Bob out, I might be leaning for a lateral goaltending move for Bill Zito. But you can convince me, and maybe even Cooper as well, that the 36-year-old Jacob Markstrom is going to be rejuvenated, at least for one of these 2 years left on his $6 million per deal. But what say you, and do you expect the Panthers to be deep in the playoffs this year?
Yeah, I mean, John, listen, last season they could just not get out from behind the injuries, and you pointed that out. We know that. I think everyone who even pays half attention to the Panthers knew that it was always going to be an uphill battle when you have Barkov out for the entire year and you're missing Matthew Tkachuk for effectively half of the year with other minor injuries along the way. It's going to be appointment television. I want to see what it's like with Matthew Tkachuk reunited with his former teammate Jacob Markstrom. I think there's going to be a rejuvenated spirit there and a real belief. I think that the Panthers aren't that far removed from being the top class team in the NHL, and I think that they can hang. It's not making an excuse when it's true, right? You can hang last season on a peg on the wall and point at it and say, we were just hurt. That's not who we are. Now we have Brady. Now we have some additions that are going to make a difference. I think that Brady, whose numbers you pointed out, they do need to rise back up, but we're looking at, an irreplaceable, almost completely unique, brother and brother playing with each other situation. I think that there's going to be some real exciting stuff going on in Sunrise, and look for the Panthers to rise. We'll put it that way.
Before I let you go here and we transition, what do you think about Jacob Markstrom in specific?
Yeah, I think Markstrom in particular this is one of those where I'm going to go on feel, and a part of it's the personal bias too. I remember his time in Calgary, and he was a major part of some success with some good Calgary Flames teams. He's going to be playing with an excellent team in front of him, again, barring any more serious injuries. And And I think that this is the final stretch of what has been a great career. 883 is the number that stands out to me. We've got to get that number closer to 900 for the save percentage. It just has to. Shutouts, I don't think they're going to necessarily need because of the scoring prowess in front of them. Goals against average is like to get that 307 down maybe just below 3. So I think it's minor tweaks both ways, and Markstrom's the kind of guy who's got the experience to at least have the potential to make that happen. So I think it's a solid move.
I agree. And then the opening night to note, again, it's a 5 p.m. Eastern start. It's going to be the Cats and Canes to lead off at the start of the season. I'll have that, and then Cooper Hopkins and I, a couple nights later, will have the Kraken and the Flames as we watch a couple of his teams end up take the ice. It'll be a lot of fun on Thursday, October 1st. So it's not going to be that far in front of us. So we're going to get back into some hockey. But I got to stop here with the Anaheim Ducks as we get moving forward. Some massive trades prior to the 2026 NHL draft. But what is general manager Pat Verbeek going to do now? That's what I had in my notes. First, it was defenseman Owen Zellweger to Buffalo for forward prospect Anton Wahlberg in the 45th pick. Ducks then land picks 15 and 29 of the draft as center Mason McTavish head to St. Louis. A 7-year ×6 for $42 million until 2031. Good player, but St. Louis is paying for his future potential. They don't get to hold on to defenseman Jacob Trouba or John Carlson, who they acquired at the previous deadline, and now one of their most promising players, Leo Carlson. Again, 70 games played. He was a second overall pick, 21 years of age in 2023. 29 goals, 38 assists, 67 points, +4. Got an offer sheet from the Philadelphia Flyers and Daniel Briere. It got matched because you knew it had to. 5 years and a total of $90 million and $18 million per. It was the highest paid player in the league. We'll talk about who's the highest now, but that is something we'll mention with Verbeek. It's defenseman Nick Jensen as well, 2 years, $4.5 million. But AJ Greer comes over from the Cats. He gets paid $4.25 per for the 29-year-old grinder. 4 years, $17 million. FYI, if the Ducks didn't match for Carlson, it would have been 4 first-rounders. This was a team on the rise, but I think cap hell can hit quickly. We know it's going to go up over the next few years we talked about. But Pat Verbeek, I think Cooper is going to have to ask himself, maybe answer those questions. Why'd you wait so long on Leo Carlson?
Yeah, and that's the question, John. But you know what? It is water under the bridge now, and I do think that contract will be a bit of an albatross. I think it's going to hang heavy on the organization's neck, but I don't think that it's necessarily black and white. I don't think that just because it's a high price that it is a bad deal. I think that Carlson will still be the top point scorer on the team. I think that he could push. I mean, we know that, right? I think he's going to push past that 80-point mark, maybe even closer to the 90-point mark, and will really carry the Ducks, I think, a decent way and into the playoffs again. But it's really about that salary cap. So right now, I'm going to say, hey, let's look at the immediacy. We're talking about the upcoming season, singular. I think this is a good deal. They could have had something a little earlier, but listen, they still got their man just at that expensive price tag. It might be a little shaky as the years go by, depending on how they manage the cap situation.
That's what we're going to have to watch for the Ducks because, again, they had their playoff push last year before they fell to the Golden Knights. We like what they're doing. But, again, it's a fiery rope, as Cooper and I talked about. You got to make sure you keep that all in line. I don't hate what the Boston Bruins did, trying to keep a playoff spot. They always play well above their heads. J.J. Peterka, 27, 41, 68, just a season prior. I do think his production will shoot back up, 25, 22, 47 with the Mammoth last year, 7.7 per until 2030. But Utah does get 3 firsts in return, couple this year, which they got Sebastian Kosa from the Red Wings. We'll talk about them later. Utah also locks up defenseman John Marino, 29, 8 years, $54 million. Good for John Marino. He's a good player, 6.75 per, 4 goals, 32 assists, 36 points, +42. Boston does move on from Jonas Korpisalo in exchange for prospect Cale Väisänen in 2028 fourth. Defenseman Connor Clifton, 31 years old, bottom 6, 2 years, $4.5 million. But Cooper, for me, the Bruins always punch above their weight.
Yeah, and I learned my lesson a few seasons back when I predicted the Boston Bruins to miss the playoffs, John, during some predictions we made, and they went on to have one of the best regular seasons in the history of the sport. So I have to be real careful with the way I approach this, but I'm going to say something. I want to see if you agree with me here. I won't pose it as a question, but just let me know what you think. I think that Swayman did a lot highlight some of the flaws of the Bruins last year. A lot of heavy lifting in 25-26. I don't know if he needs to be Superman for them, but I think there's some red flags there. I know that we got Clifton Will Borgen. I actually like coming into the Bruins, but Cam Neely, I think, is walking a bit of a tightrope, and I'm probably still hoping that Swayman can make a big difference. Just tell me what you think about the goaltending situation for Boston.
There's a lot of pressure on him, and there's also a lot of pressure on Pasta, correct? That's why they brought in J.J. Peterka to try to get some more goal scoring. And yeah, he does hide a lot of their faults, but yet every time you feel like you're going to count this team out, you could have mentioned it in the Atlantic, as we talked about. Did we really expect the Boston Bruins to be able to do what they did a couple of years ago when they got Zadorov and Elias Lindholm, players that we like? They make all those big moves, and yet they're there.
Yeah, and it's just another example about how, and this remains so. This has been this way for several years now. The Eastern Conference is so tight. The margins are so. Think about what happened with the Capitals. Not just a flashback. 96 points. 96 points. And we're talking about, and that's the margin, is that 2 points, one toward 100, away from that triple-digit point mark. It's a very narrow path to walk. And the Bruins, I think it'll be challenging for them. I think they'll hang on, maybe sneaking into one of the wild card spots in the East.
We'll talk about more of our predictions at the end. That's an annual tradition. Hey, we get to do this in a positive light this year. First time for a long time in Buffalo, New York. Some offseason losses don't stop what was an interesting time for them. The 50-23-9 record and a playoff series win. First off, defenseman Bowen Byram says he always wanted to be a member of the Chicago Blackhawks. Interesting. Jarmo Kekalainen, the GM, wastes no time in making a deal. It's the fourth pick in the draft, and defenseman Daxton Rudolph. So, again, they won a playoff series. They had a great record, and they still got the number 4 pick and a second rounder alongside blue liner Louis Crevier, who was really good, honestly, for Chicago, the 25-year-old, 25 points for Byram, who got a 6-year, $75 million at 12.5 per, and forward Jordan Greenway. I like Byram, but saving the cap space for Kekalainen and moving on, and Tuck, I think, was the right call. And as we discussed prior, with Zellweger, 22 years old, 3 years, 3.10. He comes from the Ducks to Buffalo. He gets a lot of upside, and I think their blue line is already set. You add forward Zach Benson, who was awesome in the playoffs in an extension, 7 years, $52.5 million at 7.5 per. Great stuff for the 21-year-old. 65 games played, 43 points, plus 27. He had 9 points in 13 games, plus 6. In the playoffs, Peyton Krebs, who I've liked, 4 years, $18 million, 4.5 per until 2031. He had 39 points in 82 games played, plus 13. He's durable. Beck Mallenstein, 20 years old, 6 years, $17.5 million among notables. Goaltender Devin Levi looking to get started still. He'll head to the Edmonton Oilers for a 7th in 2028 in exchange for a 3rd in that same year that goes to Buffalo. So again, a little bit of subtractions there alongside Bowen Byram, but they get Owen Zellweger. They save some space. They sign Zach Benson. I think they had a decent offseason, all things considered. Now the golden question, you already know this, Cooper, is can they repeat it, do it again?
Yeah, listen, in a word, yes. I do believe in this team, and it took a long time for us to really. I love that you set us up, John, with a little bit of optimism for Buffalo, because how could you not have it now?
Yeah.
They've changed their trajectory as an organization, and I think even with the departures, you're not alone in liking Peyton Krebs. I think that's a really sharp deal and a solid player that's going to make a difference in New York, in Buffalo, and I'm not the only person to think this. We all know about how talented Rasmus Dahlin is. I think it was Bleacher Report that's predicting him to win the Norris Trophy. I don't disagree with that, and I think that's going to go a long way to allowing that blue line to keep Buffalo right where they are. I think that several points over that 100-point mark, that 107, 108, 109 region for them is very attainable, and I would be surprised if we don't see them do something similar this year.
Get to hear that again. Just to hear you say that has to put a smile on the Sabres fans across. Have been waiting a long time for some positive news.
100%.
Carolina Hurricanes, they've won the Stanley Cup, and then they add veterans Nick Delorier and Yusuf Valimaki. Edmonton Oilers add Stanley Cup champion Freddie Anderson in goal. The rumor mill is still abound, but I think as we continue to press on late in the year now in August, that Connor Hellebuck probably stays in Winnipeg, but we'll see. I'm watching if defenseman Alexander Nikishin gets his deal. He's 24. I think he's on the up and up, and Carolina's got to get him signed. I'd rather keep him long term. Didn't expect Carolina to do too much because you don't have to do too much. Brandon Bussey was excellent, but we do want to get Alexander Nikishin signed.
Yeah, and John, I think you're right on. When you win the Stanley Cup, you don't want to upset the apple cart. The old sayings, sometimes they apply. If it ain't broke, right?
Yeah.
And it's far from broken. You took home the best trophy in sports. I think what we're going to look for here is maybe a slight regression. You know how we were just talking about the Sabres in that the point totals. Let's look at the win column real quick. It was 50 wins last year for the Sabres, 53 for the Hurricanes. I think it's fairly natural to assume that number might drop, but for the Hurricanes, dropping a few more games, you're still right around the 50 win mark.
Yeah.
I think they're basically a shoe-in to not only make the playoffs, of course, but to make it a decent run. And like the Panthers of several years ago, I think the pieces are mostly still in place, especially if guys like Seth Jarvis have nice offensive years to get really deep into the Stanley Cup playoffs.
I agree. And again, they're in control of the Metro, as we discussed, so I think they're going to be in good shape. For the Blackhawks, we've discussed Bowen Byram, that big move, but they also had defenseman Ian Cole on a 1 year at $4 million. Now we have to monitor the shoulder injury once again at practice. Connor Bedard, he's going to get a full recovery according to his physician. Still only 21. Feels like we've been talking about him the last 4 years. His contract's official now. 5 years, $75 million, 15 per until 2031. 30 goals, 45 assists, 75 points. Minus 18. He's a career minus 98. But then again, that just talks about Chicago Blackhawks and their rebuild, trying to get talent around him. And oh, by the way, one of the Stanley Cup stalwarts returns, if not for Johnny Tays already retiring. Patrick Kane gets his 2 year. The 37-year-old, 16 million, 8 million per, 67 games played, 16 goals, 41 assists, 57 points. You would take that all day long as Patrick Kane returns and Connor Bedard gets his contract signed.
Yeah, John, well, I'll start with Patty Kane. It certainly feels like the farewell lap or laps have begun. And what a career! I mean, I think he still has plenty to give, and I think he'll be really energized and jazzed to do it in front of fans in the Windy City who are going to really embrace him and have already been so excited to get him back. What we're looking for Bedard is just some sort of steady progress forward, right? You made a great point. Feels like we've been talking about him for a long time. He's still the future of the organization. And look, they were the second by points. They were the second worst team in the NHL last year. You know things are going wrong when you're below the Calgary Flames. We'll get there. But I think the Blackhawks will take a few steps, but it's still a rebuild mode with some seasons to go here before they're really competing.
Do you think they have any pressure on them right now or no?
Listen, I don't think so. In part, here's my thought about the Patrick Kane return. I feel like his presence is a little bit more Kopitar in Los Angeles without the playoff appearances. Sounds like a bummer, but I think it's more let's reconnect with the fans this way. We're not going to throw away the season. Obviously, they're still going to make their best effort it would be a surprise, I think, for Chicago to make the playoffs this year, perhaps even next year. But this is a little bit more let's close the book on this previous era with Kane's return. And then as he exits, Bedard hopefully continues to raise his game, elevate some of those around him. And as Patty Kane probably rides off into the sunset, the Blackhawks are maybe making the playoffs. Maybe there's 1 year where there's a crossover and they make the playoffs with Kane in his final season. We'll see. But I'm just glad he's back home.
I like your outlook there. Again, we got a few more teams before we stop on our own. Colorado Avalanche, usually we talk about them very early in the show. This one a little bit later. Joe Sakic returns as president of hockey operations. They were busy. Couple of trades with the Nashville Predators to start, likely because Chris McFarland, who was in that GM position alongside Joe Sakic, now works with the Nashville Predators. Ross Colton and Jack Drury head to the Music City for prospects and picks. Dallas Stars got involved too. Good players, and Maverick Bourque and Ilya Lyubushkin in exchange for a 2027 second round and 2028 third can just close out the Nashville portion as Alexander Kerfoot, 2 years, $3.5 million, also signs. Val Nichushkin, who I liked as a member of the Colorado Avalanche, but he couldn't stay away from the ice out of trouble. heads to the Columbus Blue Jackets for a second rounder, a third in 2027, a fifth in 2028. Swap of forward prospects in Ivan Ivanius, you got to say that twice, and Fabian Lysell as the Bruins get involved. Avalanche pick up defenseman Brett Kulak. They sign into an extension. 32-year-old gets 5 years, $22.5 million at 4.5 per. Got to think he likes that. Brent Burns, one more go-around for the 41-year-old at $850K. Noah Juleson, 29, 2 years, $2.2 million. Forwards Jaden Shorts goes over from the Kraken. 34 years of age, 3 years, $9.75 million, 3.25 per. He had 26 points in 50 games plus 5 of Vinny Hinostroza, who can pretty much move within the two-way. 32 years of age, $875K. For the Colorado Avalanche, we knew it was a disappointment for them to get knocked out so early, but still they're hanging around. You know the team is pretty good. Val Nichushkin, it might be a little bit of a hit or miss. I don't know if the Avalanche will win a Stanley Cup. They're still working alongside Nathan McKinnon and Kel McCarr, but what say you?
Well, John, a couple of things. Let's look, it's a three-phase game, right? There are 3 zones you got to work in. You got your defensive zone, you got your neutralized, and you got your offensive zone. Okay, let's look at all 3. I think that on the offensive side, the Avalanche, who last year were plus 99 in goal differential, that is the best in the league last year by a pretty wide margin, in fact. The second place and third place teams are like down in the 50s. So the Avalanche, look, they got tons of firepower. We know all about it. You lose Nichushkin. I think that's a great get for Columbus. Look, the stars in Colorado are going to remain some of the brightest stars in the sport. All right, let's move back to the other side of the ice. We'll go all the way to the other end. We'll go to that crease. Can Blackwood and Wedgwood do what they did last year? Can they do it again? I think it's Wedgwood who's 33. Blackwood had some moments, but was also inconsistent to a certain degree. I think what I'm trying to point out here is that there's going to be some regression to the mean, kind of toward that middle ground. But like we talked about with Carolina, the Avalanche, who had 121 points, they won 55 games. You come back toward that mean, that middle ground a little bit, and you're still, again, right around that 50-win mark, maybe high 40s. That's going to get you in the playoffs. So I think they'll still be there. The goaltending situation, really more than anything else, is something to keep an eye on.
I think so, too. Again, we'll monitor with the Avalanche. Again, Cooper and I talked about it when they initially won. Our first one together was the Bolts and the Avs, thinking about they might win multiple, not in a row. We didn't say that, but we're still waiting for that again for the Avs. A couple more before we stop. Might just go through this quickly and then stop for our teams. So for those Blue Jackets, we talked about it. Zach Werenski, probably the best offseason news they got was he had the discussion with the direction of the franchise. He likes what he sees. He'll stick around. Goaltender Jack Greaves, who's pretty good, 25, 3 years of 3-year deal, $15 million, 55 games played, 26, 19, and 9, 260 goals against, which is pretty good considering the team around him. 908 save percentage, 2 shutouts. Cole Sillinger, the 23-year-old, gets a 3-year deal at 13.88, 4.63 per. In 81 games played, he had 8 goals, 25 assists, 33 points plus 2. Team re-signs former Calgary Flame Eric Branson, adds goaltender Phoenix Koplik from the LA Kings, 1 year, $850K, as well as Ryan Lomberg. I'm surprised that he left Calgary to go to Columbus, but the 31-year-old gets a 2-year at 1.3 per. And then we'll talk about the Stars and stop. As we mentioned the trade just prior, but Joel Kiviranta, 1 year, $1 million from the Avs and Stars. Captain Jamie Benn, he's on his last legs. The 36-year-old does stay with the team. It's not that $10 million plus deal that he had from a couple of seasons ago. It's $850K. In 60 games played, 36 points plus 8, but in the last 2 playoffs for the captain and Jamie Benn has been awful. 24 games played, 3 points, minus 18, no points last year. That's what they need. They need Jamie Benn to get production. Jason Robertson, a bridge deal only. 1 year, $12 million. He played in all 82 games, 34 goals, 51 assists, 96 points, plus 22. Robo sets him up for a monster payday. And Jim Nill's got some work to do because when you brought in Mikko Rantanen and some of the other stuff, you knew you were going to be in cap hell. Dallas Stars, good team. But now they got to really decide how much Robertson's worth.
Yeah, backing it up real quick just for a moment on the Blue Jackets. The Lamborghini revs his engine and drives across the border to Ohio. I mean, and he really is an engine guy. He's a grit guy. I think that's actually a great. And yeah, there's some bias with the Flames history, but I think that's a great get. He's a Stanley Cup winner. Let's not forget that he was with the Panthers when they did win it all. And you know, the Blue Jackets. I'll just quickly say the pieces that have left and been added. I don't see it. It feels very kind of equal, sort of a 1-to-1 proposition. It doesn't feel like they're going to be able to push beyond that kind of low 90-point mark. We shall see. I don't think they're a bad team by any stretch, but do they have the extra legs to get into the playoffs? It'd be hard pressed for me to just throw them in that mix. And then the Stars, we're starting to see, John. We've been fans of the NHL for many years, and you and I covering the teams in the league for many years now, and we're seeing the doors start to close on a little bit of an era, kind of a smaller era. We think about Crosby and we think about Ovechkin, and that they kind of lead the way when we think about eras. But don't forget about guys like we just talked about. We just talked about Brent Burns. At 41, finds a new team. He's going to be in the Rockies with Colorado. Interestingly, his contract, $850K, right? And then Jamie Benn, younger, but another 1-year, $850K contract. The numbers sort of haven't been there, but the history with the team, I think those things matter. What's interesting for me for the Stars is, look, everyone's talking about Robo, and rightfully. There are two things that are an argument for me here, and then before we move on, you tell me what you think. There still feels like there's a bit of a cloud over the Dallas Stars with the Jason Roberts situation and the way it's been handled. However, the fact that they got something done, even if it was begrudgingly, even if there was some salt and some sandpaper behind closed doors, it's still a bit of a prove-it deal. I think that teams are going to be willing to pay him no matter what. But if he can really push his numbers and elevate his game this year, he gets a monster payday, like you pointed out. The question is, can he do that? You think he's got the focus to stay in that mode and knock those numbers, bump those numbers up? And if he does so, John, you think the Stars are still going to be in a good spot as a team?
How much realistically can he knock his numbers? He's not the fastest skater in the world, but he's got a lightning shot and a good set of hands. I mean, 34, 51, and 96 plus 22, as we talked about. Are we talking maybe he's got to get to 115, 120? I'm not sure that's possible. And I like Robo a lot. I think they're in a good position. But again, as we talked about too, there's also a lot of pressure on another goaltender in Jake Ottinger, as we mentioned. He's got to be the guy for them to get stuff done in the playoffs and win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and I'll put I'm glad you pointed this out too. I should give the context. We're not talking about, Robo going from a 20-goal scorer to a 30-goal scorer. We're looking for, can he cross the 40-goal mark, right?
Yeah.
Going from 34 to 40. Can he push the assist to 55? Are we flirting with that 102, 105 points total, where really you're starting to produce, that's what Connor McDavid does in his sleep. But if you're in that kind of rare air, he's getting, like we said, either with the Dallas Stars or somewhere else. Robo's getting paid either way, but he can tack on several more millions if he bumps those numbers to where we were just talking about.
Yeah, he puts himself as a franchise cornerstone then, correct?
Absolutely, no question.
So I'm going to go ahead and give you this lead in, and then I'll let you break it down for as long as you want with the Calgary Flames, because I like what they did. And Craig Conroy continues, I think, to provide a rebuilding masterclass. Simon Nemec, the defenseman of the Jersey Devils, comes over to Calgary, still just 22 years of age. Remember, he was a second overall pick, 68 games played, 11 goals, 15 assists, 26 points. He was minus 11. Maxim Sipolkov in exchange for a first-round top 10 protected picks in 27-28, as well as a 2026 second-rounder. But again, he was a second overall pick in 2022. Now we got the move that was expected for Blake Coleman and defenseman Ole Mata, the Minnesota Wild, as Calgary picks up Jake Middleton for a 2027 third, 2024, and a 2029 second. Nemec then locks down his deal with Calgary. 5 years, 36.25 at 7.5 until 2031. But outside of Huberdeau now at 10.5, and that expires in 2031, they still have just under $15 million in cap space. Defenseman Carson Carrolls, who I think fell to Calgary, round 1, pick 6. Goaltender Tobias Treball, round 2, pick 42. And Joe Aginla, round 3, pick 65, among latest draft notables. Craig Conroy, I think, has done a good job, and I really like the swing they took for Nemec.
Yeah, I think, let me put it this way, for both from my own brain and for any other Calgary Flames fans listening out there, and if you are out there, send me a message. Let's talk Flames with John Ott, who's been forced into Calgary Flame fandom. But John, I think what I think Craig Conroy is hoping for, and fans are going to hope for here with Simon Nemec, is basically a reverse Sam Bennett. I think that what the team is hoping to see, now this is happening earlier in the career. Bennett spent a number of years with the Flames and he flashed, right, but never was able to really lock into the consistency. I think you could say that for Nemec so far, coming from, the other side of North America now to Alberta. I think what they're hoping for, what I'm hoping for, is with the opportunity to be treated like a top guy, I'm hoping, and I think everyone else is, that he can step into that role. And look, he's not going to single-handedly. He and Matt Coronado are not going to. They're not going to score 45 goals each and just magically drag the Flames into the playoffs. I think it's still going to be a very challenging year for Calgary. I think at this point, and you can tell me what, we've watched a ton of games that Jonathan Huberdeau has played. With the nature of his contract and the nature of his play combined, the projection is that he will remain a Calgary Flame through his term. I don't think that's a great thing for the team, and I don't think there's enough evidence to think that he will return to form prior to his arrival in Calgary. That's a disappointment. What does that mean for the team? Where does he line up? Is he a third liner now? Does he play well enough to kind of float on the second line? Michael Backlund is another year older. But we're starting to see Craig Conroy admit to himself and the fan base, we've got to get ourselves through, almost like the Blackhawks, let's get ourselves through what feels now this kind of mushy middle, undefined era, the post-Kachuk era, post-Sean Monahan, etc., and let's stash as many draft picks as we can, set ourselves up to really make some noise when we start to hit maybe as early as 2028, 29, then the Flames are really in the mix in the Western Conference.
I think that's exactly right, because you talk about guys before, as we mentioned, with Zane Parekh, Hunter Brzustevich. You got Carroll's now, I think that Felton also a 6th pick on defensive side. They have a lot of talent to be able to use. I do think that they will miss Blake Coleman. That really does sting in terms of what we knew was going to happen, because I thought he's been a role model citizen and pretty much everything else that he's able to do production-wise. And as we say it honestly with Huberdeau, and maybe this is me being a little bit nice because I've covered so many games with you, but he really was hurt last year. And again, if you put him in that second line or third line side, he's still going to be able to give you, I would think, at least 60-plus points of production.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I'm hoping that is true. I know that the potential is there, but guys like you pointed out, I didn't mention him. I should have. Zane Parekh, can he start to emerge as what would be almost the Rasmus Anderson role, right? Can you not only have your skill, and the reason why you're in the NHL, you're physically dynamic, you have vision on the ice, you can move the puck, you're a threat offensively, and you're defensively sound. Can he starts to take a leadership role? Matt Coronado, can he start to take a leadership role? Their captain presumably won't be with them all that much longer. It feels like a transitional time, and I think that we all have to be okay with that and just hope to see maybe a season like, and this is not a great thing, but maybe like the Predators had last year or the Sharks. Flames were below 500 by 5 games last season. Can they just flip that, where they're above 500 by 3, 4, 5 games? I think that would be a step in the right direction.
In the Pacific, you never know. Again, we're going to talk about another one of Cooper's teams here, because I have a talking point that I want to discuss with them as well. But for the Seattle Kraken, we talked about that trade with the Cats. Mikey Samoskevich comes over, 23 years of age, he gets his deal. But it's another maybe bottom 6 forward. Maybe that's a problem that Ron Francis and company have. $11.55 million at 3.85 per. Former Maple Leaf Bobby McMahon, 30 years of age, 6 years, $34.5 million, 5.75 till 2032. Since the trade, McMahon 10, 4, 14, never more than 34 points in a season. Jared McCann still needs his deal. Remember, the former 40 goal scorer can't lose his production of 60-plus points on average on a team that needs it. This is going to cover the Canucks. This will hurt the Kraken. Jamie Alexiak, I thought, was pretty good on that blue line. He gets a 2-year, $10 million as he leaves the Seattle Blue Line. But we talked about it, especially on the December side before we flipped the calendar year to 2026. Seattle Kraken were dead last in the NHL at that time. They were awful, but they did rebound a bit. But now we wonder what's next for Shane Wright. He's alongside trade rumors. Matty Beniers maybe possibly inside that as well. What are the chances that he's getting enough production, needs his numbers to bump up? What do you think the Kraken need the most to get back in the postseason? Maybe that's more guys that are top six talent, not bottom six. But this is where I wanted to stop because we talked about Robo. Seattle Kraken threw a lot of money at Jason Robertson, maybe more than $15 million per. He turned it down. What did that mean to the fan base and to you?
Yeah, John, that was, I'm glad that you brought that up. And I guess glad is a relative term because I think that was a blow to the fan base. You know, in Seattle, as a Seattleite, there is a real pride in the Puget Sound area in Seattle's fandom. And that goes, you see, the most obvious version is the 12s, right, with the Seahawks. But we're talking about even, you know, Washington Huskies fans and the passion for that team. You know, it's not an SEC program, but that's about as close as you're going to get on the Pacific Coast, along with USC and Oregon. And then, you know, the Mariners having a down year, the fans still coming out and showing out for a team that's greatly underperforming. All of this is to say, I'm referencing the other sports. I think that Seattle fans thought there may be more similarities between them and their experience. Let me put it this way. Their experiences may be more similar to what the Knights fans are experiencing, and that has not been the case, with the exception of, you know, that upset win over the Colorado Avalanche a few playoff years ago. The team has been kind of quiet, and I think it's starting to feel more like an island on the NHL map. What really needs to happen, I think, not only for the fan base, but also for players, is to have one or two Kraken really break out this year. I don't think it has to be a run to the Western Conference Finals. What if Matty Beniers scored 30 goals this year? What if Jared McCann had 15 more points this year than he did last year, right? Where it's nothing that I think players notice those things where it's like, okay, Canner and Matty feel comfortable where they are. They're able to elevate their personal ceilings where they are, and then build up the players around them. Those are two guys who are leaders on the team. I think that would go a long way, just to showing fans and other players who are going to have to make decisions at free agency or younger players, hey, you're not just, you know, you're not cordoned off in a black hole up in Seattle if you're playing for the Kraken. There's real potential there.
I agree with you. And again, we saw them alongside with the Chicago Blackhawks when you got to spend your birthday together. And that was a memorable trip. And it's a lot of fun. I really want to see them do well. And honestly, that opening matchup that we're going to get between the Flames and the Kraken are interesting because it's two teams that are trying to head with ways towards promise. And it'll be fun to see. But Matty Beniers, you're absolutely right. And it's not because I have his jersey. He's such a good defensive stalwart, but they really need some offensive production. I don't know if he's going to be that guy to do so, but they need him and Shane Wright to move north and get some production.
Yeah, and I think it's fitting that the Flames and the Kraken will meet each other. I mean, the Flames were one of, if not the lowest scoring team in the league last year. And listen, it's exciting. Yes, when we watch on TV. Yes, when we're at the rink and we buy our tickets and we see. It's great when 7 goals are scored between two teams in a game. And sure, you can still win a game 1-0 or 2-1. I think the Kraken and the Flames both, to whatever degree they can, let yourselves take the risk to be more offensively explosive. Yes, for the Flames, that means putting more on the shoulders of Dustin Wolf, who already has tons of weight on those shoulders. For the Kraken, you know, does it mean you might lose a game because you're a little bit riskier offensively? At least you're making that. I think players and fans see that effort. You're playing an exciting style. And if it comes with a little bit of, hey, that bit me in the you-know-what, I think fans and players can live with that, especially if some of their favorite players are putting up some numbers. And I'm hoping Matty Beniers in particular, who is defensively sound, can also flash on the offensive side. That would be incredible to see.
So I have been maybe lamenting this part of the section. Cooper's probably salivating at the bit to help me talk my way through it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with the moves on the Red Wings side, although they do add Victor Arvidsson, 54 points, 2 years, $10 million. Keegan Kolsar, bring a little nasty from VGK. for a 7.27, a third and 2029 backup. Daniel Tarasoff from the Cats. His numbers aren't great, but he'll be there. I'm still in lock with my fire and brimstone chat. Should the Red Wings miss the postseason again, I'm expecting them to do so. But this is where I want to talk and spend my time with Detroit. I wanted a resolution with Dylan Larkin prior to training camp. Steve Yzerman stepping down as the GM does not solve their issues. Am I right to say that the Red Wings are at a crossroads? Because I think the last thing they can do now is be indecisive. I was fully expecting this team to be a second-round playoff participant by now, but really they could be closer to rebuilding the rebuild. That's why I'm frustrated. I'd rather they top three, bottom out, miss the playoffs, or push. You got to pick a direction. Waiting around on Alex DeBrincat, they needed to get him signed already. Patrick Kane's gone. And honestly, yes, I put that in my notes. I am crying inside because Patrick Kane was so good for this team. And now you don't have his about 60 points of production. Maybe you call the kids up and see what they can do, and then you get a top three pick. This is where I'll talk a couple more, and then I'll leave it with Cooper as well. Very briefly, I don't mind the Larkin, Raymond, Sider numbers for Steve Yzerman. He got those right. 8.7 per, 808, 855 respectively. Those are great contracts for Larkin, Raymond, and Sider. But Yzerman's free agency really was a disaster, just bottom six. And I liked Andrew Kopp, JT Compher at the time, but they haven't done enough. Mason Appleton, Ben Sherratt, I don't really care for as much. Not a lot of help to follow. Outside of the first round that we talked about with Sider and Raymond, the drafting has been a little bit up in the air, some good, some not so good. The biggest thing for me for Alex DeBrincat, that was a wonderful trade. John Gibson, Cooper got that right. I got that wrong. I didn't think it was going to work out so well. Those are great trades, but what about the rest of them? There wasn't many trades. That Jake Wallman move to get him the first time was great. When you shipped him out for futures and future considerations, got nothing back in return. Every other team in the Atlantic has had their turn to shine and have some fun. Are the Red Wings better after 7 years of Yzerman inside this division? I can't say that they are. With the organizational combo, you talk about that between Larkin, Yzerman, and Chris Ilitch. Everybody deserves a little bit of blame in that combo meal. But everybody else, other than the name of Steve Yzerman at that time, would have been fired by now. And as an executive here, it hurts for me to say, but he's failed.
Yeah, John, I feel for you. I really do. And look, I'm a fan of the Calgary Flames and the Seattle Mariners. I think that what the last thing the Detroit Red Wings needed, and you said it 30 seconds ago, the last thing they needed was to find themselves at a crossroads. They needed to simply be on a path, and now you even said this. I don't know what path they're on, and even if they're on a singular path, which direction are they headed? Is it pushing with a fairly top-heavy roster with not a lot of depth, with some questions, and a leader who wants to exit? Is there really a legitimate chance for them to push and break a decade-long playoff drought? I don't want to be negative, but my brain says no. We look at all of these teams in the NHL. If we were describing and we're more neutral, pick a random other team, or the Philadelphia Flyers, pick a team.
Yeah.
I would say no. I would say these situations would mean no, this team is not ready to make the playoffs. So does that mean the Red Wings need to bottom out, be in the bottom 2, 3, 4 teams of the league and get that draft pick? Unfortunately, I think that may be the best way forward. There is that cloud here of the Larkin situation. And with Yzerman stepping away, John, it feels like there's too much instability. I don't want to put my hope into a franchise that doesn't feel ready to take the next step. And I'm sad to say, but that feels like where things stand today.
I just want to do one more quick thing, if you don't mind, if we have time. As far as Larkin, his trade teams that he wanted to go to, Dallas Stars, Vegas Golden Knights, Florida Panthers, Minnesota Wild. Again, I don't blame Dylan Larkin for wanting to have some moves not be made under Steve Yzerman over the last couple of years when he wanted help and Yzerman said simply do better. But at the same time for Larkin, if that's your no trade list, trade request for teams, I consider that very soft in the Vegas Golden Knights. They've already won.
Yeah, and this connects to some of the other things we've talked about. We could do a whole show just about this, but it's it's almost the binary effect. It's like the Kraken effect or the Golden Knights effect. It feels like everybody who wants it's the Kevin Durant to the Warriors. It's the LeBron James to the 76ers. It's that idea that these teams are one or both of historically dominant or currently dominant. And I think that Dylan Larkin believes that the Knights, they already won it, they got close again. There just seems to be a genuine belief among the player base, among the NHL players, that there are certain destinations over the past half decade or so, including this year and this coming year, that are the coveted spots. But if that's your list, I don't know what to say. It's a real middle finger, if I'm going to be honest, to the Detroit Red Wings, to be the captain and to do that to one of the most storied fan bases in the sport, even beyond just the confines of hockey. The Red Wings are legendary. I know the playoff drought is long, but you're the captain. What are you doing? I'm sorry. I just have to say, I know you got to get your bag. Everyone's trying. You have to get your earnings. Fine. But man, oh man, what are you doing? If you bring that team back to the playoffs and you have a little bit of success, you get a statue. In Detroit, with one of the greatest NHL franchises ever. I feel like it's short-sighted, and it's a disappointment for everybody.
Thank you for having my back on that one, because I couldn't have said it any better. The Edmonton Oilers will move on. Ryan Shea, 5 years, $20 million, 30 points in 80 games in 29, and played well in his first full season in the NHL. And alongside with the Pens, he moves over. We talked about Tristan Jarry and Freddie Anderson. Now Devin Levi. We can report the Darnell Nurse era in Edmonton is over. That entire 9.25 cap hit until 2030 is absorbed by the San Jose Sharks. Shakir Mahamadulin, 2 years, $2.5 million, and Zach Sharp go the other way. Mike Babcock, we talked about this a couple of years ago at the Columbus Blue Jackets. He didn't even make it out of training camp. This time for good, apparently, as he replaces the bench boss and Jay Woodcroft that went to the Stanley Cup Finals twice. Babcock does have his work cut out for him and himself and his goaltending, but with the latest Sharks price piece is physical, and it's Matthias Ekholm, Connor Murphy, Jake Wallman. They're all going to have to hold in that bottom six. Will need to contribute. Jason Dickinson, 33, 5 years, 20 and a half, 4.1 until 2031. Matthew Joseph, 1 year, $1 million. RNH, Matthias Janmark. Just not sure they're going to be a playoff staple with longevity, but it's the Mike Babcock era in Edmonton. He was used to Zetterberg and Datsuk. He's still got Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, but is that really enough?
Mike Babcock. Look, I'm trying to put myself in the shoe. This is not something I would normally do, but John, for you, I will do it. I'm putting myself in the shoes of the Edmonton Oilers fans right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as optimistic as I'm trying to be because of the roster, I am still feeling like there is something lurking behind me, and that is the lack of success for Mike Babcock, basically since he won the Stanley Cup almost 20 years ago. I forget where I saw this. He hasn't coached into the second round since it was 2012-13,
yep.
I think. And so if you're going to jettison Woodcroft, okay, I get it. Being second best is not the best. And if the goal is to be the best, okay, you make a change. I understand. But this is the replacement? Maybe it was a lack of other options. You know that Connor McDavid is effectively putting his stamp on all these decisions. So this couldn't have been a surprise to him. And I think if he would have vetoed it, we wouldn't even be talking about Babcock in Edmonton. But it just doesn't feel, I don't know, John, it's tough to put my finger on it. Maybe the season goes the opposite way and I'm proven ridiculously wrong. But it doesn't feel like this is the answer. It doesn't feel like this will make the Oilers better. Will this man who won the Cup 20 years ago, just because he won the Cup 20 years ago, will that fix all the problems? I don't think so. But tell me if I'm crazy. Tell me if it's some of my Calgary Flames fan glasses. Maybe it is.
It's not really, because we've covered it all. We've seen the team enough times. They continue to get older again. We have no prospects. Prosperity is what we want to say between McDavid and Draisaitl. We've said that for years. We know what they're going to bring, but it's about the rest of the team. I'm just not sure they had enough. That defensive core gets older. Yes, I like Freddie Anderson, but he also doesn't have the Carolina Hurricanes defense behind him anymore.
Yeah, and you know what? And look, hey, 41, 30, and 11, the Oilers last year. And okay, different coach, and maybe he lights a fire under their butts and all this and that. But we keep talking about kind of regression or progression or coming back to the mean. McDavid and Draisaitl are gonna carry this. You would think just the two of them on the ice alone against 5 players from another team, they're probably still an 80-point team. It's and a goalie in the net. It's ridiculous. But there's a very thin line. A few more losses, and you're dropping down to that Mammoth Kings level from last year, where you're barely scraping into the Western Conference wild card. Again, the Oilers were 1 point ahead of the Mammoth for that first wild card, and just 3 points ahead of the Kings in the last wild card. And Babcock doesn't feel, to me, unless I'm just way out of bounds with this, he doesn't feel like, is he going to automatically pull, I don't know, 8 or 10 or 12 more points out of this team? I just don't see it.
It's going to be hard, and we're going to have to figure out what's going to happen. Again, the Pacific Division is one thing, but still, we'll figure it out as we get there. The Winnipeg Jets will go quickly. They were quiet, but they kept the peace alongside soft ads. Cole Perfetti, 5-year, $30 million, 6 per till 2031, 32 points, -9. He had 50 points last year prior for the 24-year-old. Big L. Bjork, I saw him in the World Juniors, loved his game, his speed, his ELC. He signs that. Stuart Skinner is a member of the Winnipeg Jets, a 27-year-old, 2 years, $7.5 million, 23, 17, and 9 in the mix with Edmonton and Pittsburgh at 88 save percentage, 2 shutouts. He's going to be the backup. They had defenseman Mario Ferraro, 3 years, $12 million. We'll see what happens with Connor Hellebuck. The LA Kings, Peter Laviolette, the former cap, he's been around for a while, the New York Ranger. He's now a member of the Kings as they move on from Jim Hiller. 35, 27, and 20. That Petman overtime loss point got them into the playoffs, 90 points, WC2, but they need some regular season wins. Matt Zuccarello, he signs from Minnesota to LA, $5.5 million, performance bonuses, 1 year, $1 million outside of that, 54 points -5. Corey Perry, one more go around, 1 year, $1 million, 37 points in 72 games. Scott Lawton, 3 years, $10.5 million, 3.5 fur. He had 20 points -5. Eric Halla, the former New Jersey Devils centerman, 81 games played. It was 38 points -15 in the mix for him. They do sign Brant Clark, 23 years of age, 7.4 at his extension, 5-year, $37 million, 40 points +11, and essentially his second full season. But it's a team in transition. Anze Kopitar retired. Drew Doughty, 36 in the final year of his $11 million deal. Darcy Kemper and Anton Forsberg between the pipes expire at $7.5 million combined, total of around $18 million. Artemi Panarin is the same in 2 years, $11 million like Doughty. Could be $30 million over the next 2 years as this team becomes cap flexible. So a lot of pieces going to move in and out over the next couple of years. They'll have a lot of money to spend, but you're talking about a team that's very defensively sound. But again, 35, 27, and 20. You got to get some regular season wins if you want to keep yourself as a serious playoff candidate.
Yeah, and we just talked about them a minute or two ago in context with the Oilers and, where their spot was when they locked up a playoff position last year. Kings were, fairly decently clear of the Blues and Predators, and Sharks all finishing with 86 points last year. I think, again, this isn't, really a stats observation for me, but here's what the deal is. You have not played a game without Anze Kopitar, other than, some injury. You haven't played a game without Anze Kopitar on your roster for too long for me to remember. It's already been announced, John. You may have seen this. The statue has been announced. The unveiling of his statue outside, still feels weird to say it, but Crypto.com, Staples, will come, I believe, at some point during this upcoming season.
Good.
The number will be retired. We knew all this was coming. Hall of Fame in the future. But, man, even with Doughty's presence still there, how does this team respond? Maybe some of those younger pieces really step in and fill that role. But until I got to see it, and it might take until the All-Star break, I got to see this Kings team keep the wheels on the bus. But I think it's going to get a little shakier, as most people would agree, with Kopitar gone.
I agree. With the Minnesota Wild, we already discussed Larkin and that possibility. That's not going to happen. Former Flame and the shootout legend Justin Kirkland, $850K. Other deals on forwards Dylan Gambrell, Nick Foligno, Mason Shaw. defenseman Zach Bogosian, goaltender Calvin Pickard. Deals average around $1 million apiece. Bigger piece, the former Philadelphia Flyer, they got at the deadline of Bobby Brink, 24, 1 year, $2.75 million, 30 points -7. They don't have cap space, so I doubt they can sign Marcus Johansson, Vlad Tarasenko, Robbie Fabry, UFAs, Jared Spurgeon. His 7.5 expires after the season. They'll need money. We talked about it before. Kirill Kaprizov now just beginning his 8-year, $136 million deal that carries 17 per until 2034 when he'll be 37 years of age. Quinn Hughes is going to be a UFA next year. That likely is going to eat at that 7.5 surplus. Is it Quinn Hughes or bust right now for Minnesota?
Yeah, I think so, John, and I'm really glad you set it up that way. I think that 7.5 that will be expiring with Spurgeon. It's sure. Oh, it's going to make some room, but that room basically is immediately earmarked. And I think that the Wild are in this not entirely unique position, but they've always been just below. And then the last year, I mean, literally, we could just look at the standings, but just a step below last year's Avalanche and Stars. But above, at least statistically above the Knights and the Oilers. But when it comes to performance, they end up underperforming, and that has been the narrative on them for a number of years now. So I think it is Quinn Hughes or bust. I think that they're going to have to put all the eggs in that basket to have him push them over, maybe not over the line. I'm not sure if they're going to lift the cup, but to get another step closer.
I agree. Montreal Canadiens, a team that I've loved watching in the Atlantic, get to see them a lot firsthand. The Canadiens' lifer, Brendan Gallagher, 14 seasons all with Montreal. His career numbers: 911 games played, 246 goals, 241 assists, 487 points plus 26, 50% retention of his $6.5 million, 3.25 to the Canucks for his final year. The 34-year-old is still a fit in the bottom six and well respected in the NHL. But Cooper, I do want to stop here because it made me think of Michael Backlund. I think Brendan Gallagher has been a great story for Montreal. They're going to miss him.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, and we mentioned Backlund a little while ago when we were talking Flames, and I think what's been reassuring for me is Michael Backlund has been locked up. He is the most tenured Calgary Flame in the history of the organization now in terms of games played. And I'm glad that he's going to get to continue on his road as not just a member of the team, but the captain. And then when it's time to sail away, he will. And I think that Gallagher will be missed. I think that there are a lot of fans, a lot of Habs fans who would have liked the team to find a way to keep him around and have a situation like Michael Backlund is enjoying in Calgary right now.
So cap space already good for GM Ken Hughes, who is one of the best. Ivan Demidov next year, that'll kick in 20 years, 8 years, 9.15. Just over 73 million, all 82 games last year, 62 points plus 3. I think it's scratching the surface. Jakub Dobish was awesome in goal. I know he got lit up by Carolina, but they went and won the cup. Next year, that kicks in the 25 years of age goaltender, 5.375 at 16.07 in total. 43 games played, 29, 10, and 4, 278, 901 save percentage. And Kirby Dach, 1 year, 3.6. They're going to be a unit for a while. Sam Montembeault, Philip Danault, Josh Anderson. Free agency fills up over $14 million next season. Expect the Canadiens to not go anywhere. For the New Jersey Devils, we did discuss the Calgary and the Nemec deal, but I would be remiss if we didn't talk about their captain in the extension. Nico Hischier, 27 years of age, 5 years, $58.5 million at 11.7 per. Gets his extension that kicks in next season, 66 -6. The tandem of Jake Allen, 1.8 only until 2031. That's ridiculous. And then Nico Dawes and David Rittich. You got 3 goaltenders, and that must be nice for your cap. They're only combining at about 1.05 million in between the 3. They make peanuts, essentially. They do get Anthony Mantha, the former Red Wing and Flame, Pittsburgh Penguin, 31 years of age, 2 years, 9.5 million. If he's healthy, he's been productive. 81 games played, 33, 31, 64 plus 10. I'd like to see this group improve under new GM Sonny Mehta. I think even fans outside of New Jersey would like to forget that Tom Fitzgerald era. And, we talked about it alongside Timo Meier and some of the other moves that they tried to make when they tried to compete with the Cats and everything else too. But Mehta is a lifelong Devils fan. He's lived in the area. They want to see that team do better. And I bet Jack Hughes does too.
Yeah, John, hey, selfishly, I love that we mentioned a few former Flames, including Kirkland Signature, who was on the move. He's the shootout specialist. And then you got Big Save Dave. And yeah, I think the Nemec deal still leads the way here for the Flames. I think it's a good deal both ways. Nemec, there's almost like the Devils didn't know how to use him. There's still a lot of talent. And now you said you'd be remiss. I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about, as you mentioned, former Red Wing and Flame Anthony Mantha. I was always disappointed. I remain disappointed that what could have been a longer run in Calgary was completely derailed by injury. He looked great before he was knocked out for a season, and I think there wasn't enough on tape. Maybe it didn't. There wasn't enough time for him to gel with the team or in the city, just because he was rehabbing the entire time he was there. And so he moves on. I think that's a really nice piece for New Jersey. And yeah, you got to move on from last year. I think there were a lot of pundits that thought the Devils would be a significant player in the playoffs. Major underperformance, missed the playoffs altogether by a wide margin. But again, the theme, I stumbled my way into a theme. I think they will come closer to the mean this year. I think they'll pick up their game and definitely be competitive as we get down to the late stages of the season in terms of making the playoffs.
Yeah, I think we need to. We'll go through the Metro here again. The New York teams, New York Islanders, 43, 34, and 5, missed the playoffs by 8 points. Issues cap space here. They lack high-end talent outside of Calder Trophy winner Matthew Schaefer, still just 18, by the way. It was amazing. They'll likely improve after Andre Plot, Kyle Palmieri, Casey Cizikas. The average of 35 as their trio of deals expire. That's about $13.5 million. But I already like the addition of Matthias Maccelli, who I wish the Red Wings could have gone after. 25 years of age, 71 games played, 14, 25, 39 minus 23. He gets the one-year deal, $2.25 million. He's been a near 60-point guy with the Coyotes at that time. And for the Blue Shirts, this is not something I normally do. Between Cooper and myself, this is a unique opportunity between Calgary, Seattle, Detroit to talk about and follow the prospect journey over the next few years, because I don't want to put us all on blast here. But in between the prospect of possible top 4 defensemen in the NHL, I think I'd rather go after guys like Carson Carrolls or Chase Reed on defense rather than Albert Schmitz, because again, they're trying to get someone that's maybe ready now. These other teams like Calgary and Seattle are getting guys that are going to have a much higher ceiling later, and we'll see if that ends up biting the Blue Shirts. But they do land a monster piece. Pavel Dorofeev becomes a Blue Shirt, so they replace Panarin essentially with Dorofeev, the 25 years of age. He was in the Stanley Cup Finals, all 82 games, 64 points, 37 goals. In the playoffs, he was terrific. 22 games played, 15 points, plus 2. He had 12 goals. Vinny Trocheck, he heads to the Utah Mammoth. In return, Sean Dursey, Cole Baydoun, a third-rounder, comes back. Marcus Pettersson is acquired in a trade with the Vancouver Canucks for a 2020 third-rounder. He carries a 5.5 per cap hit. Well, Borgen goes to Boston. Rangers picked up a second in 27, 2020 a third-rounder, and a second if Boston makes the ECF. But Cooper and I are a little bit iffy on that. And one last thing for the Blue Shirts before we stop. Oliver Bjorkstrand, 31, 1 year, $4.5 million. He had 32 points in 80 games minus 14. Former Red Wing Joe Veleno, 1 year, $1.2 million. While defenseman and Ken Holland, Red Wings former first runner Dennis Cholowski, which would have been Quinn Hughes at that time. That makes me sick to my stomach every time I think about it. Gets a 2-year, $875K per. Not sure it's enough for the Rangers. I get what they're trying to do with Schmitz, but I think they try to go for a guy that would hit now to get them in the playoffs. I like Dorofeev, but I don't know if it's enough.
I agree, John. I think there's too steep a hill to climb here. But yeah, the Dorofeev signing, I think, is elite for them. And I also really like, again, I try to check myself, but Bjorkstrand history with some of the teams that I have close to my heart. Bjorkstrand, I think, is going to do nicely for them. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up staying there longer after that 1-year deal. And Veleno as well. And I think that the Rangers, who were one of the worst teams in the league last year, just have too much to do. But I like the pieces. I like the additions. And we'll see if these guys stay with them longer term.
We're getting closer to closing time. We'll go to Ottawa and Philadelphia first. So I thought the return after Brady Tkachuk wasn't terrible, but it does hurt. Now sends Royalty and Daniel Alfredson both to the Maple Leafs. I think that is sacrilege. Honestly, I'm guessing the Wingman podcast between Brady and Matthew did no favors for Brady Tkachuk. But the good news is that Claude Giroux does re-up on a 1-year, $2 million cap hit, up to $5 million in bonuses. Andre Burakovsky's just got to get his feet back underneath him and stay healthy. 1 year, $5.5 million off the trade with the Chicago Blackhawks. Big fish, the San Jose Shark, William Eklund, 23 years of age, 7 overall. In 2021, 78 games played, 53 points, minus 31, but that was the team around him. He heads to Ottawa along with 20-year-old prospects Kasper Altunen and Brandon Sabota. The team made the playoffs as a WC2, but they lost Brady. My guess now is Tim Stützle. That's your captaincy.
Yeah, John, the Senators, I can't get anywhere past the Brady Tkachuk stuff. I have to see it's a different version, but in the same category of the Kopitar, post-Kopitar era for the Kings. The Senators were notably better than the Kings were in East and West, different conferences for sure. Senators just under 100 points. Kings just crossed into that 90-point range, but the rosters, it's just... Those guys meant so much to the team. They meant so much to the fan base, so much to there's that nebulous thing that you can't always see on a stat sheet, even in the advanced stats. You know what they bring, you know the goal scoring, you know the assists. Yeah, we get it. There's a point total. You can measure those things. But the stuff you can't measure, I do think matters. This may be a tough pill to swallow. What I'm hoping for Senators fans, I'll just say this, is that it puts a chip on their shoulder and on the team as well. It's the Larkin effect. Our leader has left us, wants to leave us, the 4-letter word you, and we're gonna succeed in spite of that, or in spite of your departure, or in spite of you not believing in us. Maybe I'm seeing that through fans' glasses. I think players know that, hey, this is a little bit more about contracts and money and term and where do you want to live, and now it's all about taxation and all that stuff. But I'm hoping the Senators can put pedal to the metal a little bit. But Brady just brought so much to them. It might be tough sledding this year.
Yeah, we'll see if they get back to WC2. My guess is no. The Philadelphia Flyers, in between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, I didn't expect them to make the playoffs. I don't think a lot of people did, but I give full marks to Dan Vladar, head coach Rick Tocchet, and GM Danny Briere. Even with some contracts locked up long-term, connecting Couturier, Tippett, Dvorak, Sanheim, I don't like the various extents. They find a way to win and compete, much like the Boston Bruins. They have about $14 million in cap space. And even after Trevor Zegras, 25, 4 years, 36.5, 9.13 until 2031, 81 games played, 26, 41, 67. He was even 35-point jump from last year. Safe to say he likes in the town of brotherly love. Defenseman Jamie Drysdale, 24, 4 years, 26, 6.5 per. 78 games played, 8, 32. He had that total with 21-22 with the Ducks. So, again, he's going to improve. Zegras had a huge jump, but Vladar and Wall, I think that's going to be interesting. Dan Vladar, and I asked Cooper this several years, can he lead a franchise? Can he be good? He was awesome last year. 5 years, $27.5 million, 28, 5.5 per next season. That's good because in 52 games played, it was 29, 14, and 7, 242, 906. He posts the best numbers in mileage. He was a 30-game guy. Before that, he played 52. In the playoffs, 10 games, 4 and 6, 218 goals against. And again, part of that was the series after with Carolina. But 922 and 2 shutouts. He was awesome. Same for forward Tyson Forster, 24 8-year extension at 56.8, 7.1 until 2035, 17 points plus 8. He likes being there. Vladar has done well. Joseph Woll has been good for Toronto. He comes over. I really like what Philadelphia has done.
Yeah, no question about it in my book. And sure, Dan Vladar is a former Flame. I usually the sun shines brightly for the most part on guys who take their career through Wild Rose Country. But I will say Dan Vladar, who was very patient and professional when the situation in Calgary started to take place. Man, he had a smile on his face. He was a good teammate. He worked hard, played well for the Flames. I loved when he was on the roster, was bummed when he left, had a feeling that he would do well, didn't know he would do this well. And man, John, he got himself paid rightfully. Mm-hmm. And I think that knowing they have a stalwart in the crease now and some nice pieces in front of them, even Zegras freeing himself from the Anaheim, kind of the muddy waters of Anaheim, and he loves black and orange. Just went to the other side of the country to, wear the same colors, but they look better on him in Philly. And, I don't think he's looked at as being that guy who was once upon a time on the cover of Chell. I think it's like, hey, I'm a nice piece on this team. I matter here. And I think the entire roster feels that way. They played that way. They are the kind of, it reminds me of the Flyers of old. That, little bit that grinding mentality, can still score a little bit, got a great goaltender, willing to do the tough things in the tough areas of the ice. And I imagine them having similar success this coming year.
Are you still doing good on time, my friend, as we get set to close?
Yeah, we're coming up to the good stuff, so let's keep it rolling.
Okay, so for the Pittsburgh Penguins, again, we'll just do this one more go around. Crosby 38, Malkin 39, Carlson 36, all signed for one more season. Chris Letang really for 2. 24.2 comes off the books for the trio after the year. It's a total of $33 million off the books after Andrei Kuzmenko, 1 year, $5 million, and defenseman Sam Girard. Igor Chinikov, 25, 3 years, 18.75, 6.25 from Columbus. He was really good in that trade. 43 games played, 18, 36 plus 4. Trevor Van Riemsdyk, 2 years, $4 million to Clan Carl. You got 2 years, $3 million. Arthur Shelovs. Again, he was a champion in the AHL alongside that Vancouver franchise. 25, 1 year, 2.8. Currently just outside of $14 million. You also had Nick Robertson, who we talked about, 32 points, 16 goals, 16 assists. You had Caden Korchak from Vegas to Pittsburgh for Parker Wotherspoon. In that trade, they retained 50% because Vegas needs the money. Tommy Novak gets his extension coming over from Nashville. 3 years, $13.95 million, 4.65 per. 82 games played, 16, 26, 42 plus 1. But the Dubas area in Pittsburgh, I thought they had a pretty good year. Although I will say in my predictions going forward, I'm not sure how long that lasts.
Yeah, and John, this has been the most obvious. We've talked about eras a number of times through this recording, and man, this is the one that leads the way. It's the Kopitar situation, but like times 4. It's literally, it really is. These guys have meant more to their team. You could make a case down through the years and decades and through the annals of history. This group on this team for this long and what they've done has been exceptional. And they have the success, not necessarily recently, but they have the success, and they have more than earned the right to carry this era out until Sid the Kid says so. And it would be tough for me to imagine a team, the Penguins, ever letting, by retirement or otherwise, this core group split. So I think that they're just going to continue to ride this until their players decide. I'm saying it. I don't think it's even in the hands of. Okay. Doesn't matter who the GM is. It's Sid the Kid and his. It's like I feel like I'm watching the movie Tombstone. It's like Wild Bill and all those guys. They're riding into the sunset, but the sun has not set yet. So could be a similar outcome for them this year. You would expect maybe a playoff position. Could they make a big run? Even with all these changes, I don't see it, but I would still expect them to be a playoff team.
San Jose Sharks might be surprising what I'm about to say. I might be in the prediction side. That'll be a surprise. But yes, as discussed, Darnell Nurse, 31, 9.25 until 2031. That whole cap situation gets eaten by the Sharks. Jacob Trouba, 32 years of age, 8.25 until 2031. So 9.25, 8.25. And then Mason Marchment, 31, 5 years, 33.75, 6.75 until 2031. So keep that in mind of those three numbers, 9.25, 8.25, and 6.75 for those three. In between the Seattle-Columbus side, he was good in Mason Marchment, but for Seattle, I think fans probably wish he had a little more production, obviously. 19, 26, 45, plus 17. $25 million combined between the trio. Dmitry Orlov, he's got one more year at 6.5. Forward Colin Graff, he signs 3 years, 12.75, 4.25, 21, 25, 46 plus 6. I do like Colin Graff. But I want to make a note of this. The second overall pick, Ivar Stenberg, that falls to them. 3 years, 3.23, gets his ELC. And Macklin Celebrini, it's one more year of his ELC at $975,000. He is officially now the NHL 27 cover athlete, the highest paid player in the NHL. 5 years, 94 million, 18.8 per. He's still just 20. He played all 82 games. He feels like Joe Thornton and everyone else combined all in one. Patrick Marleau. You mix all that together, 45 goals, 70 assists, 115 points, and a +8 for the longest time. He was single-handedly trying to drag his team into the playoffs. Well, Smith is going to need a deal. 21, 69 games played, 24, 35, 59 +1. You think about Michael Misa, Stenberg as well. I think Mike Greer's done a good job. When I talk about Darnell Nurse, Jacob Trouba, Mason Marchment, maybe some veteran leadership, that makes sense. But I would have liked to see them be a little more frugal. Yes, they needed to hit the cap floor, but I don't want it to bite them in the butt because I like what the Sharks are doing.
I like it too, and I totally understand where you're coming from with at least the idea, the concept of frugality. But man, when you have a winning lottery ticket and you know it, money's going to flow. It's going to flow in. It's going to flow out. Celebrini is one of one. And yes, Connor McDavid, and yes, Sidney Crosby, and yes, Ovechkin, and go down the list.
He belongs in that conversation.
100%. And 115 points last year. What's stopping him from crossing 120 this year, John? 125. What? I can barely wrap my mind around that. He can't drink. He can't go to a bar in the city where he plies his trade. He won't be allowed in. But listen, there's so much else going on with the Sharks too. I never thought I'd see it. Darnell Nurse, not an Oiler. Okay, I have to come to terms with that. It'll be wild to see him in teal. But if he can do decently well, I think that's actually a strong pickup. I mean, maybe it doesn't work out. He's still getting paid a lot of money for usually what he brings. But there are some changes that are going to push this Sharks team in the right direction. And man, oh man, the sky truly is the limit for Macklin Celebrini.
St. Louis Blues, most covered already in the Capitals. Ducks lead up with the core of Robert Thomas, Pavel Buchnevich, Dylan Holloway, Mason McTavish, Connor McMichael, Philip Broberg, all have at least until 2031 together. That collective cap hit's also tradable for GM Bill Armstrong. Jonathan Berggren, 25, the former Red Wing, 1 year, $2,022,000 combined points, along with the former Duck Ross Johnson, 32, 3 years, $6,014 points. Dylan Dubé is going to try to get back into the NHL, coming from all of that stuff from the Flames. 27 years old, still keep in mind at that point. St. Louis Blues, we'll see what they do. The Tampa Bay Lightning didn't have a lot of cap, even after the Radish Blue Line moved to Toronto. They get John Carlson, though, 36, 2 years, $17 million. You still have Victor Hedman on that blue line, so I think John Carlson and him will play quite well. 71 games played, 14, 46, 60 +9. Ilya Mikheyev, the former Leaf, 31, 4 years of age, or a 4-year deal, $15.4 million, 3.85 per, consistent 30-point guy until 2030. Jeffrey Veal, former Duck, 5 years, $12.5 million, 2.5 till 2031, career 35 games played, 10 points -2. Still a strong year, but I think the one thing that we all have to talk about, and we know this, Nikita Kucherov is a free agent at the end of the year for Julien Brisebois.
Yeah, and you're right, John. Yeah, there's a lot to cover. We touched on this at the top of the show. I think that the changes here for this team mean to me, like we're talking about the St. Louis Blues, I think that we're going to see the Blues slide a little bit. I don't want to give it all away, so we'll talk about where we think teams are going to shift. I think it may be a shift in the wrong direction for St. Louis. And for the Lightning, Kucherov, that is something hanging over the team for sure, but I still like what they have. I think that they're going to be a strong team this year. It's really the Lightning, as much as I hate to admit it, and that's reverberations all the way back from 2004. Until they show me otherwise, until they show me a reason to really doubt them, I'm just going to believe that they're going to be one of those stalwart Eastern Conference playoff teams.
Yep, and again, they're going to have to be in another battle with the Montreal Canadiens, who, again, they were, didn't they outshoot Montreal about 5-1, and they still lost in that Game 7?
Oh, good, man. You know what? I hadn't thought about that game in a minute, and it all just came flashing back into my mind. I can't believe that. They did everything they could. They just couldn't get it behind or get it into the net. So, yeah, that's a memorable one for sure.
Last team to talk about, but certainly not least, in the Vegas Golden Knights. They make the Stanley Cup Finals, but John Tortorella is out. They promote from within, which you always like to see with Anderson Silver Knights and Ryan Craig. He's a new bench boss. The contract additions in terms of Carl Lindbaum in goal, 3 years, $900K. He'll be the third string if needed. Defenseman Jeremy Lozon, he gets paid a little bit. 29, 6 years, 24 million at 4 per, 10 plus points. Rasmus Anderson, the Calgary Flames, he stayed in Vegas. He'll sign that long-term deal, 7 years, 59.5 at 8.5 per, 47 points plus 4. Does that contract sound about right to you?
I think it does. I am sure that Vegas Golden Knights fans might bristle at that response from me. Again, I have to be aware of my Flames-colored glasses, but I know what Raz can bring to a team. I got a firsthand look at it for many years. I don't think that he was that guy since he arrived in Vegas and through the playoffs. I think he wasn't dead weight, but John, you and I talked about this a little bit, but he was not at the level he needed to be. And granted, the Knights still made a real push to win the Stanley Cup again, and that's in spite of Rasmus Anderson not having the best version of his game. I think he'll get closer to it. I think that's what he's being paid for. I think he's proven it in the past. This was a little bit of a transition time as he settled in with a new team. I know he loves playing with Noah Hannafin. The two former Flames, I think, will be strong for a number of years. And I would imagine if things go well with the Knights, and why wouldn't they, because they're the Knights, I think Rasmus Anderson, you could predict he would spend the remainder of his career there.
Just one last thing before we get into the predictions and close the show. I know we talked about the promotion for Craig inside from within for the Silver Knights, but for John Tortorella, you had to believe they had multiple conversations after the Stanley Cup Finals was over, correct? Because without Torts, they wouldn't have gotten to the final.
Yeah, I think that it's a real compliment to what Tortorella represents in the NHL and his caliber as a head coach. I think that he probably takes the job having a private conversation about the likelihood. It may not have been 100% settled, but the likelihood that he would not be asked to stay on, with an asterisk. I think if he wins that cup, I think it's a very different conversation. And, how could you possibly let a Stanley Cup winning coach who resurrected your season float off into the ether? I just don't think that happens if they win it. So I'm sure that's where some of his feelings came from, that they were very close to winning that cup again. Yes, the Hurricanes were dominant, but still, you're in the final. You're close to winning the Stanley Cup. I'm sure Torts would have liked to stay on. It seems like he liked the players, and it seems like they liked him. But they may have had a plan in place, meaning the franchise, to elevate and get their new coach from within. So some of those things might have already been set. Either way, I think that they'll continue their momentum from last year.
So per tradition, as we always do, we got the standings in front of us. Cooper is going to give me a team, and I'll start off here first. But Cooper's going to give me a team that missed the postseason last year that will make it in 26 and 27, and give me a team that had the playoff success last year that's going to fall out. So as we start in the Eastern Conference, again, there is a lot to talk about. You had the Buffalo Sabres, a 30-point improvement. The Toronto Maple Leafs, a completely different core. You have the Florida Panthers, who were injured pretty much all of last year, trying to get back into the postseason. I think I'm going to leave that one for Cooper because that's a little bit too easy, but I might be going a little bit easy escape route as well for the team that's going to make it, because they've made so many changes. I like Kyrou. I like Tuck. I believe in Spencer Carberry. Give me the Washington Capitals to get back in. And I know this is going to be sacrilege to Mr. Alec Nava and everyone else across Steel Town, but I think sometimes you're due for a regression of the mean, and I'm going to try to get out ahead of this. I'm going to say the Pittsburgh Penguins missed the playoffs.
It's funny, John. This is our brains. This is our work together as friends and broadcasters and hockey fans. I could have very easily gone the exact same way. So that's my way of telling you. I think you're right on. I think the Capitals are almost a shoe-in to get back in. Where their spot will be, we'll determine that as we get into the actual season. Yes, I agree with you, partly just because of age, partly because of the pieces around them. The Penguins are at risk, but I don't want to make the exact same picks. So here we go. I think that I'm gonna take. We talked about taking risk earlier.
Okay.
I gotta put my money where my mouth is. So for the second time, I think in the past, gosh, I think it was either 4 or 5. It must be 4 years. I'm gonna pick the Boston Bruins, who were in wild card 1 last year, to drop out. They will not make the playoffs. I'm picking the Boston Bruins to fall away. And I'm going to take, even with the departure of Simone Nemec, I'm going to pick the Devils to do what people thought they would do last year, to do it this year. I think that they will actually make a little run. It's probably going to be wild card 1 or 2, but I think it's going to be Devils in and Bruins out.
I like that you're making the big push, because we could have honestly, let's just say this before we move on to the West. We could easily swap Florida and Ottawa, correct? And nobody would bat an eye.
Yeah, listen, I mean, if I could also go, not that I think your picks are super intelligent. I could have gone, oh yeah, the Senators will drop out. I mean, they were wild card 2. They lost their captain. Feels like, okay, let's push a little more toward the margin. So I'm going, yeah, Devils up and Bruins down.
So this one is a little bit tougher as far as who I think is going to leave, but I had this in my back pocket, and I've been sitting on it for a while, just because I look at the cover athlete and I pray there is no curse. I know everybody in California is praying that, even in the outside, if you don't root for the San Jose Sharks. But damn it, I'm going to do it. The San Jose Sharks, they will be in the postseason this year. I'm taking them to make it. Who is going to fall out? This is the obvious one, and I think I have to do it. Man, I could go Ducks or I could go Kings, but I'm going to say the LA Kings. I just, like Cooper said, you're without Anze Kopitar. It's a little bit different. I know they want to get some other stuff in there, but I really want to get the Sharks in. So Sharks in, Kings out.
Okay, again, so very similar to our Eastern Conference chat from a few seconds ago. I'm going to say you just hit a couple of bullseyes with those dart throws, John. You're pretty much always on the money. So I agree with you. I think we're going to see the Kings fall out. And I do think, in part because I'm watching for Celebrini to go 120 points plus this year. I think he will carry the Sharks into a playoff spot. Again, it might be a wild card, but hey, playoffs for that Sharks fan base, doesn't matter what seed they get, they're going to be thrilled. Again, I'm going bigger swings here. And I'm going to make this big swing first. I'm going to tell you who's dropping out first.
Okay.
And then I wish the listeners could see my face right now. I promise I'm being as neutral as possible. Do you know where I'm going, John? I'm going north of Calgary. I'm going to Edmonton. And I am claiming right here, right now on August 8th, that the wheels come off the bus for the Edmonton Oilers. The Babcock experiment is a disaster. The Oilers miss the playoffs in the Western Conference. And I will give you, now listen, the Predators have had some down times. They've been kind of a forgotten team. They were close last year.
They were.
4 points away, 5 points away. I actually say they're going to right the ship a little bit. I don't think it's going to be ultra impressive. I think we're looking at wild card 1 or 2, but we're going at Oilers out of it. Major issues in Edmonton, and we're going Preds back in as a playoff team.
I like the Preds back in because they made a big push last year. They were 34-10. Because you look about 2 seasons ago, Cooper, it wasn't an unmitigated disaster like the Titanic when you're thinking about it. We need to say, hey, they need to make a 30-point improvement just to get back into the postseason. They damn near almost did. But I can't imagine, from what you just talked about with Mike Babcock, if that happens, and we usually work maybe a couple times before Christmas, can you imagine those conversations on Sportsnet at that time?
Oh, it's the Calgary Flames, they're the team that's all about the fire. The Oilers will be sinking into their oil wells. They will be drowning in that. The hair will be pulled out. They'll be the ones feeling like they're running around on fire. It will be dark times in Edmonton if the prediction comes true. And I'm truly not saying this out of, I'm taking my fan hat off. I just don't think Babcock's it. I think that the team will be splintered. I just feel like Connor McDavid, who already, it feels like still has a toe or a foot out the door. I just don't know if that's going to make him believe any deeper that this team can do it the way it's currently constructed. And so watch out, Edmonton. That's all I'll say.
So Cooper and I, again, are going to work together on the opening night for the Flames and the Seattle Kraken. That'll be Thursday, October 1st of 2026. So again, that's less than 2 months away for the start of the regular season. It's been fun to do this one more time in the 2026 edition. Great job, my friend. It's always as good to talk to you again, and I can't wait to get back on the mic with you soon.
Oh man, John, this was so fun. I'm glad we always do this. And now even though the sun's shining in through the windows here in Hollywood, California, I'm ready for cooler weather and NHL and hockey season to start. This was great, my friend. Great research. Also, big credit to John. His notes and his preparation are meticulous. He's a pro's pro, and we got a lot of fun coming up in the 26-27 NHL season for sure.
So in between that Ichiro home run derby, the Jimothy hats, and everything else that's been all the talk of the town in Seattle, have some fun. Again, it was nice watching Ichiro hit some tanks in that derby.
Hey, you know what? Who would have thought that the World Cup would come to Seattle and they would have a lot of great moments, but those moments would be eclipsed by a 52-year-old Ichiro Suzuki raking bombs into the right field seats at T-Mobile Park, and a disabled raccoon who has grabbed the hearts of an entire region and, frankly, the entire world. Jimothy is the king of kings in Seattle, and I love it, man. It puts a smile on my face.
It's good to talk to you. We'll talk soon again, Cooper. Thanks for this.
Thanks, John. You got it, bud.
See you.
Bye.
That's it, everybody. The 2026 edition of NHL Free Agency Frenzy was another good one on tap. We'll talk soon again. Cooper and I, less than 2 months away. It'll be in the Settle Dome one more time for one more year in between the Seattle Kraken and the Calgary Flames. On that opening night Thursday, I will be in action, I believe, alongside Alec Nava that Tuesday when the Cats open up the season against the Canes. That is 5 Eastern, as hockey will be getting underway soon enough. Appreciate you guys as always. We'll talk soon. Peace.